In the 1950s, air travel was a noisy, slow, and often bumpy adventure. Flights were long, expensive, and not particularly comfortable. You'd fly in a piston-powered propeller plane, cruising at low altitudes, weaving through turbulence and hoping dinner wouldn't bounce off your tray. Air travel was a luxury and a gamble, but most people couldn't afford it anyway. But all of that was about to change. In 1958, a sleek silver bird took to the skies, and with it, a new era was born. This is the story of the Boeing 777, the jet that didn't just fly, it transformed the world. Before we get into the story, please support us by subscribing. Also, stick around until the end to find out why the 707 might have been the most important invention of the 20th century. Before jets took over, the biggest commercial planes were the DC-6 or the Lockheed Constellation. These were beautifully designed, reliable, piston-driven planes with propellers that were as big as small cars. They could fly up to 20 hours without refueling, which was necessary since they could only cover about half the distance between New York and London on a single tank of gas. While turbulence was common and the food was often cold, due to the long periods of time that it took to serve meals, air travel was considered glamorous and was generally reserved for the wealthy, the powerful, or the very lucky. Then came the jet age. During World War II, engineers on both sides developed jet engines for use in fighter planes. After the war, Britain produced their own jet fighter, the Gloucester Meteor, but it wasn't commercially viable. But after the war, jet propulsion caught the imaginations of aircraft designers worldwide. They asked themselves, could this new technology be used not for war but for peace? Could the jet engine power passenger planes? And if so, what would those planes look like? Did the world really want to risk riding in a metal tube through the sky at 500 miles per hour, knowing that it could explode at any moment? Meanwhile, Boeing was busy making military aircraft for the U.S. Air Force. In 1954, they decided to build a military transport jet based on their new designs. Called the Model 367-80, it was also known as the Dash 80. Boeing hoped that the success of this design would allow them to transition the plane into a commercial jet for civilian use. However, the U.S. military didn't order the 367-80, and Boeing was forced to redesign it. They created the 707, a sleek silver plane with 4 engines under each wing, a 60-foot wingspan, and a range of 4,400 nautical miles. 707 could carry up to 189 passengers and cruise 35,000 feet up in the sky where the air was thin and the ride was smooth. But the real innovation was in the cabin. Unlike earlier planes, the 707 was pressurized. The plane's windows were also designed to prevent the explosive decompression that had plagued the de Havilland Comet. The 707 was a leap forward for aviation, for commercial jet travel. On October 26, 1958, the first 707 left New York City bound for Paris with a fuel stop in Gander, Newfoundland. The pilot was Bill Bain, a former World War II bomber pilot. The flight was monitored closely by representatives from Boeing and Pan Am. While the 707 was technically able to fly non-stop across the Atlantic, the plane hadn't yet received certification for transatlantic flights. So the flight stopped in Newfoundland. Had they continued on to Paris, it would have been the first transatlantic flight by a commercial jet. On October 28th, the 707 landed at Le Bourget Airport in Paris in France. Minister of Public Works personally greeted the passengers as they disembarked. One passenger, Edward R. Stettinius Jr., handed the minister a bouquet of American roses to commemorate the historic occasion. The flight marked the beginning of a new era in aviation and international travel. The 707 completely changed how people viewed air travel. Previously, many people considered it too risky or too expensive. But now more people could afford to take flights. Plus, the 777 was faster and more comfortable than any other option available at the time. Suddenly, traveling halfway around the world wasn't such a daunting task. Soon as the 707 entered commercial service, airports rushed to upgrade their facilities to accommodate the new aircraft type. Previously, commercial airplanes were limited to speeds of around 300 miles per hour. So runways were rarely longer than 7,500 feet, but the 707 needed more length to take off. As a result, airports around the world spent billions of dollars extending their runways to handle the larger, faster jets. Other countries realized that their airspace was crowded and inefficient. Before jet-powered planes flew at lower altitudes, and air traffic controllers had little trouble keeping track of them. But when several jets entered the airspace at once, controllers struggled to separate them to maintain safety. This led to the development of new technologies and policies for managing air traffic, including radar systems and new rules for pilot behavior and communication. The introduction of the Boeing 707 also forced airlines to rethink their approach to baggage handling. Because the plane was so much faster than propeller-driven models, there was less time to load checked bags and luggage. As a result, airlines had to change their policies and procedures to ensure that bags were ready for loading well before boarding. Most importantly, the introduction of the 777 had an enormous impact on the way people traveled. Previously, flights were infrequent and took hours. People could board a plane in New York and arrive in London for dinner. Flying was no longer a luxury for the rich and famous. Now, anyone could do it. As a result, millions of people took to the skies for the first time. For Boeing, the 777 was a huge success and became their flagship product. It gave Boeing the recognition within the commercial aviation industry that they had always sought, and it established them as the global king of commercial aviation. Additionally, it provided the basis for several other Boeing aircraft models, including the 727, 737, 747, and others. Most notably, the 707 set the standard fuselage width that remains common among most modern jetliners. The 707's cockpit layout also strongly influenced the design of later Boeing aircraft. The Boeing 777 was also a cultural icon. Movies like The High and the Mighty and Airport portrayed it as a symbol of speed, glamour, and convenience. Celebrities such as Elvis Presley purchased private versions of the 707, and even Frank Sinatra immortalized the plane with a song. "Come fly with me, let's fly, fly away." Today, although the original 777 has been retired, its legacy lives on. Many military aircraft, including the KC-135 Stratotanker, still in use today, are essentially 707s with different equipment. The Boeing 777 was more than just an aircraft. It was a catalyst for change, shrinking the world and bringing people closer together. It paved the way for international travel and trade, revolutionizing how we do business and interact with each other. The Boeing 777 truly was the jet that changed everything. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe.